What is up, down and sideways, you lovely individuals? Welcome back to Liga Unlocked. My name is Eric, and we're rolling into our first installment of some domestic power rankings for the summer split. Not doing full global yet. Let the LCS, LCK warm up, maybe get a second week under their belts, but we are going LCS and LEC, at least again for their specific regions. But we're doing things, we're going to try doing them a little bit differently for the summer split. Instead of fully going 8-1 or 10-1, we're going to try doing the tier lists that everybody goes through for ranking everything from fast food to colors to champions to regions in different games. Whatever it is, we're doing A, B, C, D, and the infamous S tier. So there'll be a couple teams in each tier. We'll kind of break down each tier as well, reorganize them throughout, but feels like a more accurate way to do some of these rankings instead of just what often ends up being in order of what their record is throughout the split, chronologically going through. So we're going through tiers. We're starting in the LCS, where if you were to rank champions in a tier list in terms of performance domestically, Nidalee would be below D tier, F tier, Z tier, whatever you want it to be, because there were some bad performances in the opening weekend in the LCS, but mostly there were things to be excited about. And as you look at the 8 teams, which harder to do a tier list when there's only 8 squads, you're immediately drawn to that blank C tier spot. Felt like none of these teams deserved to be there because some squads, you know, performed a little bit better than you would talk about in C. And the teams that were real bad, Shopify Rebellion and NRG, both deserve to be hanging out in that D tier. Obviously, these are the two squads that got 2-0'd, and 2-0'd in pretty damn dominant fashion. Shopify was a little bit more competitive. There were at least moments where you felt like they could take control of a game against Immortals, but then you're combining that with, well, looking at preseason rankings, Immortals was obviously a weaker team when you were looking at the power rankings. The NRG side, they just got completely smashed. 100 Thieves kicked the door down and it hit the right square in the face. NRG looked lost across the board. You even heard Contracts, one of the most egregious Nidalee performances, saying that was his worst, Nidalee, maybe one of his worst performances on stage that he's had in his whole career. Can't just blame Contracts. Across the board, NRG looked super lost in their set. Even though 100 Thieves might be a better team than Immortals come middle, end of the split, and in preseason, everyone would have said that. The fashion that NRG lost, if you were to rank these D tier squads, that's why NRG is far on the right, because they'd be the number 8 squad and Shopify would be sliding in to number 7. Both teams did not perform well in week 1. C tier left blank, as I mentioned, because Immortals looked so damn good in that 2-0. You got to bump them up into that same category with 2 other squads who lost their series, but they went the distance and they were competitive in both Dignitas and FlyQuest. All 3 squads straight chilling in that B tier. I'd put Dig at the top of these 3 because in both of even their losses to Cloud9, you felt like they had opportunities and angles to at least take control of the game, maybe even end up winning them. Especially, I think that game 2, it was, you felt like Dig had ways that they could get back in, save for, you know, who knows? Maybe Sven is playing on hit Varus, and maybe Dignitas ends up coming away with the upset against Cloud9. But FlyQuest still had their positive moments as well, but they got so absolutely smacked in that 3rd game that I'd put them that just tier below Dignitas. And Immortals, it's just a case of, no question, they were more dominant in their first set than both Dignitas and FlyQuest, but it was against the Shopify Rebellion team that really did not look super good, and obviously Dig and Fly had the 2 best teams in the league on their matchup, their schedule, so give them a little bit more leeway despite they lose that first series. They're kind of hanging in that same spot with Immortals, but didn't think IMT would get this high basically ever in the split. Even they were probably underdogs, not probably, they were definitely underdogs even in that Shopify matchup. So kudos to Immortals for showing up in that first week of action. A tier, a couple of squads that came away with the win, 100 Thieves and Cloud9. 100 Thieves, I mean, if you look at their performance individually, maybe you could be talking about S tier, but because of the level that NRG was showing, can't quite raise them up to that level. But Quid, excuse me, leaving right where he left off in terms of MVP levels in the regular season. We've been seeing all this Ezreal, but he's the only dude pulling it out in the mid lane. That might be something we see more of in the other regions as those buffs come in to the live patch for Ezreal. Again, obviously, the LCS is on the live patch. Cloud9, because they did not have a very clean first game, and because, you know, games 2 and 3 were both incredibly close, JoJo still had some rough laning phase and getting caught out moments, and Thanatos obviously took some time to level up, so that's enough to not have Cloud9 in that S tier region yet. But hey, Blabber looked great on this new AP carry jungler meta. Really the only guy I've got confidence in North America playing Nidalee in the jungle is probably Blabber for C9, because he's a guy who we've seen on that pick for many years. We've seen him be the impromptu carry dude on Cloud9, even when they have had some star-studded rosters. So all things considered, pretty solid start for this new look roster in Cloud9 with Reapered in as head coach. The only team deserving of that S tier mark is Team Liquid, because of the domination in that third game against FlyQuest, because this is a rematch of finals. FlyQuest is the hardest opponent on paper heading into this year, because they were in finals. They were at MSI, even though they bombed out so quickly at MSI in terms of level of competition, level of opponent. Team Liquid passes with flying colors. Even though it took them 3 games, you're also slightly taken into account. These are the defending champs, the same 5 returning. Even though it's a new meta, we're seeing APA on Corki look confident. Yon is the only dude still playing Smolder in the entire world right now, it seems like. But the confidence from the 2 domestic carries for Team Liquid is at an all-time high, combined with Impact being the most untiltable dude on the planet. I'm not even saying League of Legends. I'm just saying this guy in life settings. He gets a parking ticket. He gets a flat tire. I don't know why I went both things related to cars, but he's untiltable. Nothing can phase this guy in life, it seems like, and that is a perfect recipe for having TL in that S tier category alone. Maybe some other NA teams will join them. Maybe they'll be dropped down and not be in S tier at all, because let's be honest, we could definitely have no LCS teams hanging out in that S tier status. LEC side of things, we're doing the same type of tier listing, but with 2 extra squads, 10 teams obviously in the LEC. It makes for a little bit of a spicier list to go through, but again, you look at that bottom first, couple of 1 and 4 squads, both Mad Lions, Koi, and Rogue. Rogue, not surprising being here. Unfortunately, we've been accustomed to kind of talking about them at the bottom of the barrel. They've only gotten a single Baron through 5 games. They didn't even get their perennial regular season win against G2. So without that one, they're destined for a 1-win season. It's the same issues we're always talking about. Too passive, not willing to make plays, not being proactive, waiting for the other team to make mistakes, and you lose the game. Mad Lions Koi being here is the bigger surprise, especially when you take into account that at 1 and 4, they've had one of the easiest schedules so far, because they still have Fnatic, SK, and BDS to play. So they have really dug themselves into a hole. They have the lowest kills per game in the entire league through 5 games, which is also crazy surprising, because these rookies were so aggressive when they were looking good during their playoff runs. We're supposed to see growth from rookies through the next couple of splits, but they have been on a downward trajectory ever since their impressive run in the winter split. I don't know what's going on with them, DK. Next tier above in C tier, Giant X, K-Corp, and Team Heretics. Obviously, Giant X has the lowest record at 1 and 4, but truthfully, they probably should have beat G2, and of these 3 squads in the C tier, actually feel like the ceiling is the highest for Giant X as the Antonio continues to get more comfortable, and Jackie's is quietly, this dude is legit, playing like a top 4 mid laner in the LEC. We continue to see the growth out of him. He continues to be him for Giant X. We've seen him get solo kills against Caps. We've seen him on multiple different picks take over games, poke Varus. He tried to drag his team to a victory. The solo kills, as I mentioned, against Caps, and then the Talia game. He's had such fantastic performances. I can't wait to see this guy continue to grow, and I think Giant X, this is the year they actually maybe make some noise in playoffs. I know it's crazy to say that when they have a 1-4 record, but still feel like their ceiling is higher than even Team Heretics or K-Corp. Team Heretics I felt very shaky about, but because they had that head-to-head win against K-Corp, they're in that same category as them, but they have the worst goal differential at 15 in the entire league. As a result of that, their laning phase has been bad. That's the main reason they have that bad goal differential, but I mean, it feels like they should be better in the mid to late game with so many veterans on this lineup. I'm not sure if there's going to be a level up, really, when it's the same 5 guys coming. I don't have high hopes for Team Heretics. As I mentioned, Giant X, I have higher hopes for. Big bounce back for Team Vitality, who climb into that B tier alongside G2. The juxtaposition of Team Heretics, the worst goal differential. Vitality has the best goal differential, and in week 1 they were throwing these early leads in absolutely catastrophic fashion, but they bounced back with a solid week 2 performance. They beat Team Heretics in that head-to-head, as we mentioned, and actually had pretty clean games in both of their wins to really bounce back. This is a squad we were high on after a pretty deep playoff run in the spring split. Again, 0-3 abysmal start, but back on that horse. Hill is saying instead of inting, he's just baiting 1v9 in week 2 versus week 1. He's still dying a lot, but at least now he's baiting some opposing teams in for his squad to clean up. Think Carzzy can be one of the premier AD carries again in the LEC. Same goes for Photon when it comes to top laners, so things coming back online for Vitality. G2, honestly, B tier seems generous for the level that they've been at. I know 3-2, the record is really nothing to be worried about, but 2 out of those 3 wins, they did not look good. A goofy win, as everybody said, against Rogue with that backdoor, and Giant X kind of handed them a win that they shouldn't have. G2, I'm glad that the other top teams are going to be testing them, especially if they're playing at this level. Still feel like they're going to turn things around. Maybe they finish 4th. Maybe they finish 5th, whatever. They're going to be making playoffs, and once they get in the best of 5s, I feel like I've said this 10 times already, nobody's going to want to match up against them because they're the 3-time defending champs in the LEC. But yeah, they still a little bit too much of that MSI champagne so far in the summer split. A tier, you're talking the pair 4-1 squads, SK and BDS. Obviously, SK got that head-to-head win against BDS, so maybe you're putting them a little bit higher because of that. But BDS now, even though it took them a while to close things out against Carmine Corp, I feel like they were just having a little bit of fun. They were very much in control of that game till they took their foot off the pedal a little bit. But now we're starting to see Adam play things like Yasuo when they can combine now having these crazy pocket pick, off-meta picks with Adam, as well as Ice actually being that featured carry, the continued growth of Nuke on maybe even a smaller champion pool, but when he is on a pick that he's comfortable with. BDS feels like with a slumping G2, this is a chance for them to step up and really make another deep playoff run. I mean, we're accustomed now to seeing this squad finish top 3. Obviously, SK is the surprising start, and the surprise is how well Rahel and Luan have come in and been a top 2 bot lane in the entire LEC. I mean, these top 3 squads have the top 3 bot lanes. There's probably no mystery as to why we're talking about them in that high category, but Irrelevant is getting some help. What can I say? Niski isn't Valkyring into 5 people and dying, and SK looks like a clean, controlled, cohesive unit, which is crazy when the new bot lane coming in doesn't even speak the same language as the other 3 members. So big kudos to SK, but we've seen them have fast starts before and then things fall off the deep end pretty damn quickly. But I hope they keep playing at this level to raise up the level of EU as a whole, and they gotta raise up to meet Fnatic. Also had that head-to-head against them, but Fnatic sits alone at 5-0. They sit alone in that S+ tier status in the LEC. They have had the opposite effects from MSI that G2 had. They seem refocused and motivated. And listen, you saw in a lot of the interviews, especially with Humanoid and the rest of the guys, I think it was Humanoid who talked about, against somebody like Gen G, we're expected to lose. We're the underdogs, so whatever. Even in 3-0, there's things we can take. But Team Liquid were favorites. We were expected to win, so it's a much more crushing defeat to lose in the fashion that they did to an NA team. Can you imagine losing to the LCS internationally? Whew. But either way, Fnatic looks remotivated, reinvigorated. Razork is leaps and bounds ahead of every other jungler in EU. Humanoid is still in playoff form in the regular season. Can you believe it? And then you throw in the fact that Noah and Jun look like they're back in spring form, not MSI form, where they were a little bit disappointing. And this looks like a pretty damn good split. Rise it up for Fnatic, perhaps a chance at their first title in many, many years, but they're the favorites right now. G2 is going to need a serious level up to catch the rest of the boys in the EU. Not that they can't do that. We've seen them do that time and time again, but for right now, it's Fnatic sitting as the top dogs in the LEC, but that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you beautiful people for hanging out as always, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.